Discussion. Michael, you wanted to focus on if there is a God or not, and this kind of sense to it. So what's your perspective on it?
I'm agnostic, so I'm weird. I grew up in a fucking very religious family where like every sentence, 90% is something God related to it.
Yes,
Like Jesus Christ.
Same.
I went to private school, Catholic school. The thing is, my family's not Catholic. I don't know what to describe my family to begin with. They just classify themselves as Christian. They don't affiliate themselves to any particular denomination. But I went to a Catholic school, grade school and high school. And, like, I feel like, I was like, yeah, originally I was Christian. Like, I believe there's a God there. I was afraid that I had to be a very upstanding character. Like, if I don't do this, I might be condemned and go to hell. If I act this way, I might be saved. And, like, as you know your history and, like, you learn about all these different religions and cultures, you're like, who has it right?
Right.
I'm like...
It's the biggest question.
I'm like... Do I believe that there is a God? I mean, I'm open to the idea. I'm open to the idea that there's some sort of supreme being or deity out there that governs the cosmos, the universe, our day-to-day lives. I'm open to the idea. I'm very skeptical if we get that characterization of that supreme deity accurately by Judeo-Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, what's the other one? All of the religions. Is that characterization of that supreme deity accurate? That's 1 in a million. We don't know that. Right. All the religion is just a social construct. It's socially made. It wasn't like some supernatural thing that fell upon us. No, it's man-made.
Right.
I hate atheists who outright claim, oh, there is no God. Everything has been scientifically proven. You don't know there's no supreme being out there that governs the cosmos. It's not like everything's happened on chance. Mm-hmm. Maybe not, did. We don't know.
Yeah.
Like, same question, what happens when we die? We don't fucking know. Just like anyone come back from the dead and tell us otherwise, you just don't know.
Right. So that goes back to a big thing I've heard on other podcasts of like this is just a simulation and we're all just in it. You know what I mean? This is just one big fucking, who knows what's on the outside when you die. Maybe that's the end of the simulation. You get to actually, be in what's actually out there. You know what I mean? It's really trippy. But
it's like Rick and Morty, that one episode where like Morty was that one guy in the simulation living his life.
Yeah. A simulation. So my perspective on it.
You've never seen Rick and Morty?
You gotta see that.
Me neither.
You serious? If you guys want to laugh your ass off.
If you love dark humor, dark comedy, that show is funny as fuck.
So my perspective on religion is I also grew up in a very religious heavy family, but we were on the Protestant side, so you can imagine that. Evangelical, if you want to be more specific. That evangelical movement that's been going on.
You're a sinner.
Huh?
You're a sinner.
I know. Man, everybody's a sinner. But there's only one way and blah, 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 all this other stuff. But it's just like I said in college class today, we can't just be spoon-fed things that are, given to us.
Sure you can.
I mean, you can. But you shouldn't. I mean, that's the whole point of having like this open mind, just to think about things, question things. And that's what it's scary about religion, is that there's no really room for questioning because it's like a definite answer. You know what I mean? Like, the only answer is God. The only thing that makes sense is God. Like, that's it.
Right.
So, to question that, to question what's going to happen, what's going on, is this really real or not, it's scary to the religious leaders and to people in the community. I mean, as much as you want to think about it, every religion is a cult. They just call it religion because there's more people involved in it.
Right.
It's just been more massively accepted.
More mainstream.
Right. Yeah, you just call it religion.
You're either a sect or a cult.
Shit, these religions that have more than, I think, like 1 million people, they don't get those organizations don't get taxed in America. They're exempt from taxation because of their religious
People like televangelicals, like Joel Osteen and like others, they are tax-free in their fucking, like, the 1% lifestyle.
Yeah, the 1% of the 1%. Because...
and televangelists, they're all pieces of shit.
Why do you say that?
Because they're money greedy. They're all about material wealth.
So does being a materialist make you a piece of shit?
In a religious sense?
If you're simply exploiting your followers just to accumulate more wealth, then yeah.
Sure.
I gotta put more money in the meter.
You park on the street?
Yeah.
You're an animal, bro.
Oh, why would you do that? I told you to park on the side. It's free parking on the side streets.
Oh, this is
on one side. I told you it's all free.
Okay, that was convenient. I'll be back.
Why don't you go look for parking, bro?
Fuck it. No, I just put some more money in there.
Alright.
I could just walk back in,
Why
right?
don't you download the app? There's an app
I
for
got
that.
time for that.
Wait,
tell the person at the front desk that you need to go to your car really quick,
Okay.
and you're a guest,
Okay.
and then I'm up here still studying.
Okay.
Just tell them.
they're not gonna care.
No.
So to get back on that, man, I mean, I'm definitely in like the questioning side of it. Like my mom is still very like hardcore Christian, and God bless her heart because everyone has to have something to believe in. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
that's
I'm not
the-
gonna tell
that's
you
the
like.
core of it. Yeah, of course.
I'm
you're
not gonna say
no, you're wrong.
Yeah, because who am I to fucking say that?
Exactly. Like you're in no position, just like they're in no position to push their religious beliefs on you. You're in no position to say your religion is wrong.
Oh, I wish it was a two-way street like that. Unless you're, my mom apparently had no idea I was agnostic for the my past 4 years in college. I'm like, I sort of like a few months ago, she was like, when I told her I was agnostic, I'm like, you don't believe in God? Isn't the whole point of faith because there's no proof? I'm like,
I mean, just looking at things from a historical standpoint, which I felt like really opened my eyes, especially on religion, is that you have to understand the circumstances in which the religion was established. You know what I mean? Like Judaism, Christianity, Islam,
and they take the Bible by heart too. Like they're like literal interpretation of the Bible.
Yeah.
My family. I'm like, Jesus. Like my uncle, quote from Deuteronomy. I'm like, just out of the blue. Just I'm eating my meal. Out of the blue, he fucking tells me a quote from Deuteronomy. Like, I do not give a fuck. I really don't. There are so many gripes with the Bible that it's just it's all wacky as fuck.
Mm.
But there are a lot of philosophical ideas in the Bible that I hold true and dear.
Absolutely.
There's a saying that I heard that the Bible is 30% gold, 70% shit.
And then, like, where do you really consider that? Because a lot of the first, besides Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus, you get Deuteronomy, Numbers.
Basically, all first 5 books of the Bible are shit.
It lays down the foundation for things that are going to happen later
So,
on in the story.
As a historian and a religion lover, you have to look at the first 5 books of the Bible and try to understand where the Israelites were when these books were written.
Then you understand why it's such an issue in the New Testament,
And-
or even later on in the Old
Because
Testament.
you have 2 different gods. The Old Testament, this God is fucking wrathful, he's judgmental. Whereas New Testament is very benevolent, or like, you know, he's more
But that,
saving.
like I said,
It's like 2 completely different.
that's where you need to understand where the Israelites were. You have to look at when first 5 books of the Bible were written. The Israelites were in Babylon. They were struggling with assimilating with that culture because they were kicked out of they were exiled from their land. So they had to struggle to assimilate with that culture, as well as trying to maintain the culture that they had and their lifestyle and their everything that they represented. So when you look at before there was anything, it was just darkness and abyss. That darkness and abyss is a representation of Babylon itself, because the Israelites were pulled from their land of Canaan into into Uruk, the Babylonian main cities, and they were just plunged into those cities, not knowing what's going on. And in order to try to keep that culture, you need to create an angry and a vengeful God who is stronger than all the other gods. How so? He causes floods. He destroys the world.
Bro, and that's the biggest thing, man, because if you look at during that time period and the religion in that whole ancient era, it's very God-based. You know what I mean? Like, if the Babylonians were to take over some, like, an Assyrian area, they would not only, like, you know, destroy the army, but they would take their idols. They would take their gods, because it's like, well, my God's stronger than your God because I was able to take your God.
They take their religion, absorb it into their own.
Yeah, right. So
That's just like for most civilization. When one civilization destroys another, they don't like completely wipe it from there. They absorb that civilization as well.
Right. Which that goes back to Eric's idea of, you know, that what is it we were talking about earlier, with just absorbing into the culture in which you're in.
Like
know?
all these fucking pagan holidays, like Christmas, for example, it was Christianized.
Yeah, of course, because it was part of the Roman Empire, it became so mainstream during that time. You know, if it wasn't for the Romans making so many roads, Christianity wouldn't have spread so far and so wide. Of course, any Christian would say, well, no, because it's the true word and it would be able to spread because it's truth. Well, I mean, it's just convenient at the time. Really, it was that word spread around so much, and Rome was so big, especially in the Mediterranean area, where people were, or Mediterranean area where people are, shipping from one side to the other, and they're going as far south as like Sudan in Africa, and as far north as like England in Europe, and as far east as China. So it goes back to what I said about you have to understand the circumstances in which the religion was, based in.
So like for philosophical ideas in the Bible, like stuff that I hold like dearly. So like an example would be, New Testament, that's where I hold most of it. Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said,
right.
Turn the other cheek. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Most people should practice that.
Right.
Another thing I do is when we said there's no greater commandment than loving your neighbor. Mm-hmm. Yeah, everyone should have them and love your neighbor. We should all like look after each other in a community.
Somebody once told me that all these people that we learn about in history, all these great religious leaders and things like that, they were all part of. They're just teachers, all of them. You know what I mean? Whether you're from, whether you want to talk about Jesus, or Muhammad, or the Buddha, or anybody else who has these like religious teachings that they, talked about. That these guys were. That's just what they were. They were just teachers, and they looked at the world and they said, "The world is shit. We should do something about it. We should change it."
The perspective of looking at all of the world's like religious leaders or whatever, looking at Jesus Christ, Buddha, Muhammad, it's taking away the deification idea and calling them ascended masters. So that's a very New Age thought. And
I like that.
No, it's literally what the movement is called, New Age. It's a religion or spirituality. And within that movement, they say that Jesus himself was an ascended master who came down to earth to help heal the earth. But he was not God.
Wait, he wasn't God?
He was not God.
Wait, whose take is on that? Or?
It's called New Age. Look into New Age religion or New Age spirituality.
These aren't Christians who believe, or
no,
absolutely.
They're not.
I was about to say that makes no sense.
Yeah, a lot of people mad that listen to this podcast, at least from my family.
So, like my take on
I'll be the black sheep of my family when they hear me say this.
My take on religion itself is that I'm not religious in any sense. I grew up Catholic, hardcore Catholic, and I love the concept of being a priest or being a religious leader. When I was in 7th grade, I wanted to be a priest. Since I was younger, I've always been called to helping people understand the Bible and anything with religion. And I still do it now with my blog, New Age Thoughts.
Yeah, I had someone tell me that too. I remember at the church that shout out Lombard Assembly of God over in Lombard,
which is actually not in Lombard. It's probably in
a different town. Yeah, we just call it Lombard. But a guy told me I never said more than 5 words to this guy probably, and he comes up to me and he's like, "You have something about you that." It's like you have a calling for something, to do something great for God.
It's like trying to preach to a cult.
Something like that. But like I've been going to this church for a while now. And so to the fact of like maybe I don't have so much of a calling towards, religion in particular, but maybe a calling in life. And that's where I gotta figure that shit out at one point or another. And maybe religion shouldn't be focused so much on like faith, but should be focused on what you can do to better yourself, figuring out it's your life. You're the one who opens your eyes every day. You're the one who walks in these shoes, and no one can tell you what's good for you except for you. It goes back to what you were talking about earlier, Michael, about what, trial and error, what diets, what fits for you, what kind of workouts fit for you. It's the same thing when it comes to, faith and belief. What works for you, what can keep you doing what you do every day.
And that goes back to what I was trying to say. I grew up Catholic, but I decided to no longer be Catholic. I don't associate myself with the church. I do wholeheartedly believe in God. I do wholeheartedly believe that Jesus was God's son. But some of the other aspects of Catholicism I don't believe in. I consider myself more spiritualist than I do religious. just because I incorporate different ideas into my personal belief. Meditation, amongst other things that I don't feel like discussing at the moment, which I probably will later. But so yeah, I guess that's kind of new agey. If you look at the new age religion, it's kind of like picking and choosing what fits for you, and taking the good out of everything and leaving the bad out, which isn't necessarily a good thing either. Because once you decide to fall into a category of religion, you accept the good and the bad part of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, like the other day when I told you, there's this thought in Hermeticism where you can create an energetic being right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same concept when it comes to accepting any type of religion or any spirituality, or picking and choosing what's right for you. Say I like some concept in Buddhism, I like some concepts in Islam, I like some concepts in Christianity, but you accept all of the bad. By incorporating the good, you accept the bad.
Right, but you don't talk about the bad because
No,
bad.
but you have to be aware that there is bad.
Of course.
And everything is just energy. No matter what it is, science has proven this too. We are just energetic beings. And the Gnostics believe this too. Gnosticism is this concept that, they called it light. That Jesus wasn't God. Jesus was God himself, who needed to die in order to break the shell and show the light, the true light. And that the God that we worship, named Yahweh, was the God of material matter, and he was bad. But Yaldabaoth was the true God, and his daughter was named Sophia, which is wisdom. And Jesus was just the representation of Yaldabaoth.
Oh,
I remember reading Gnosticism. Like, when you read it, you're like, it's a lot to take in.
That's a lot.
No, it is. But if you look at other religions, and Gnosticism, I think, has some of it right when it comes to the light. And I think maybe just the interpretation of how somebody interpreted the language, I think it needs to be interpreted as energy, because we are just energetic beings. If you look at somebody who is just on life support, they're not there. Their eyes can be open, and they're dead. They're just a shell. If you look at someone who's dead, that's just a shell. The light is gone out of their eyes.
Yeah, a lot of people, like a lot of serial killers, always say that they like to watch, like that light in their eyes. That to fade away, that killing. That's what they crave, to see that disappear within somebody, which is insane.
Yeah.
Because you see that shit every day. If you have a kid, you get to see that light in their eyes like every day, and you want them to survive and to fucking thrive and to be better than you. You know what I mean? By the way, we're really deep into the religious talk,
Right.
Eric.
That's right.
So, but yeah, man. I also believe, Michael, what you said about how religion is kind of social in its construction, because, like I mentioned earlier, the fact that you have to understand what time and where these people were talking about things in religion. Like, you can't. It's hard to understand. If you look at it from an outside perspective. Someone reading about Judaism in the ancient times. Someone living in like Siberia may not understand fully about what's going on there compared to somebody who, lives in that area. Same thing with Islam and same thing with Christianity. Like, you have to understand the circumstances at the time of what things were going on to really get a full grasp about why they said the things that they did, why the literature is the way that it is, And maybe you can put it into your own life, of course, but,
Right. My take on religion, born and raised Catholic, still Catholic. Go to church, not every Sunday, but I try to go whenever I can. But I think religion, for me is I like it the Catholic tradition, because it's from my from my family. And I think religion with all its traditions and stuff, because a lot of stuff is made by man, but I think it gives structure to people. I think I'm all about my upbringing, my career choices. structure and like discipline is like big deal
Mm.
to me. Like so that's why I just like religion is like I see it as like a structure gives like people like something like guidelines to follow, I guess.
Mhm.
Like I think religion is very important because it gives it's like a template of how you should like conduct yourself as a human being. Because if most religions, I would think that they're all talk about the same stuff. Like don't steal, respect other people, like don't kill, don't all that. So I think like most of them is about like being a decent human being.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I tried to. That's what I tried to say with like all these. Maybe there's not like a right way. Maybe there's a heaven. Maybe there's not. Who knows? But the fact that now that we are here on the earth, we should have a way of conducting ourselves and the way that we do things as humans. That are we naturally bad? Maybe, I don't know. We should just raise a baby and see what happens. Don't
Right.
tell them anything. Teach them how to speak and stuff, but just let them figure out these things on their own. Because if you have a child who grows up in like a serial killer society, where people just kill left and right, killings, or even not even serial killer. Let's talk about like Vikings, for example.
Right.
And they were raised to do what you have to do for the community,
Right.
and you have to get wealth and food and money and all this other stuff. So what they would do is they would sail off and they would raid all these places, and they never thought that was bad. Kids
Right.
were raised to do that in that society. But now we're like, oh my God, they're like kind of savages for that. They're kind of
Right.
backward thinking for doing that. But in that society, they're teaching them something completely different. So maybe in the way that we look at religion, we're looking at it through our own, social perspective.
Right.
And making things better for us in a way.
Right.
I mean, making things more acceptable for our culture compared to,
One thing I believe that I think like different like I've seen it like coexistence and stuff. I don't think I think that's fucking like just like imagination. Like it's like I think it just doesn't work.
yeah, you can't do it. There's
Like
too many different beliefs. Like,
Yeah.
there's just like Christianity and Islam. Like, there's
right.
in their essence, there's no way that both of them can survive together. It's either
No.
one or the other. That's just one example
Hmm.
because their beliefs are just so contradictory to each other.
Right.
They have a common ancestry in their religion, but it's like
Right.
it's either one or the other.
Hmm.
There's no such thing as coexistence when it comes to those kind of. I agree with you.
Right.
But I think the attempt to coexist needs to be made. Because if we look at someone as just their religion and categorize them as Muslim,
Uh-huh.
Jewish, Christian, whatever else, it takes away their humanity as a person. Because your view as a Catholic is different than your view as an evangelical Protestant. Is different than my view as a spiritualist. And it's different than, say someone who's Muslim. Our views are different. And if we categorize each other by our religion and
Right.
attempt to not coexist, this conversation right now wouldn't be happening if it
Right.
wasn't for the idea of coexisting.
Right.
So, now that's easier said than done when it's 3 or 4 people. But, looking at communities in the Middle East, the Jewish first, the Islamic community, it's very difficult for them to coexist because of their
Right.
views. And I get what you guys are saying, but I think that part of our responsibility as human beings
Mhm.
is to attempt to coexist and the attempt.
About it, but it's two kids who are kind of like, yeah. Oh, I mean, there's probably a better term for that.
Yeah,
But,
I'll admit that shit.
I mean, I'm fucked up in that. Like, it sounds
we
how
all are.
We are, but I mean, they don't feel anything.
that's how me.
which is a real thing, man. Like,
Yeah,
it's not just kids, but like people in general that they just don't.
like that's how I am. Like
Feel.
I worry that I'm like a piece of shit. Like I'm like apathetic towards a lot of things. I just don't I just don't give a shit.
I mean,
I'm
but
like,
for me, I was like that before my spirituality.
Mm.
And once you find something that you can claim as your own something greater than you. And I think that's the whole point of religion. That's the whole point of anything that we're talking about, is finding something that represents you and something that's greater than you. Something that you feel a calling towards. Something that you feel, why do you think people join the military when they don't want to go off and fight wars? Their concept is like, I don't want to pay for school. They want something bigger than them. That's the same concept with everything in history. So once you find that calling for yourself and something that you're passionate about, something you believe in, something that symbolizes who you are, that apathy, yeah, you may still feel apathetic about everything, but you will feel very, very confident and very assured of yourself with what you accept.
Right.
So maybe now you feel that way, but maybe 5 years from now you might not. Maybe a week from now you might not. It just depends, man.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Eric, for coming on the show. You guys are always more than welcome to come back if you guys find some more shit you want to talk about, or even just to come in and chat. We're more than happy to have you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody, for listening on another installment of History's Benchwarmers. We'll catch you on the flip-flop, and we'll see you in the next episode. Peace.